Today's Targets in Focus is with Rand Merchant Bank in South Africa, whose currency strategists specialise in the African currencies, as well as forecasting the likely moves for the majors. I'm joined on the line from Johannesburg by John Cairns, currency strategist for RMB. Thank you very much for talking to Dukescop TV. John, let's start with a trader's favourite. The currency markets and this pair continue to be driven by developments in Europe. Do you expect the recent volatility to continue for the foreseeable future? And where do you see this pair heading in 1, 3 and 12 months?
Our view here at Rand Merchant Bank is that the competition to see is the worst between the US and Europe is going to be won by Europe. Pretty obvious reasons being the pigs crisis, just continued escalation there. Greece, obviously, and then in particular the mounting pressures on Italy. ECB will have to cut interest rates. Probably right down to the 1% level again, taking effective rates back to zero. So more negatives for the euro than they are for the dollar. We've been holding a 132 view on the end of 2011 on euro dollar. Probably not going to get that quite that far, but the negative trend is certainly intact, and we think that will maintain right through next year as well. There's a huge number of studies on where fair value on euro dollar should be, and like all things in economics, people differ, but the consensus seems to be around 25. So we don't see any reason why in the long term that fair value has changed. The world hasn't changed that much. Both sides of the Atlantic have problems, and so both currencies are weak, but in the longer term, don't really think why one should be weaker than another.
On to the pound dollar now then. Do you expect the pound to suffer heavily from the continuing problems in Europe and the poor UK economy, or are we likely to see it and the pound dollar holding up?
What strikes us about sterling is that it just is so exceptionally weak on a global scale. Yes, we know the UK economy has a lot of problems, but again, it's a relative issue. So yes, the UK has problems, but so too does Europe, so too does the US. And also, when you look at just what people are saying on sterling, views are so exceptionally negative on sterling. And so our view here at Rand Merchant Bank is sterling has been oversold. It's probably going to take a long time to recover its value. You're probably going to have to wait for this austerity to work through the system, and then for the UK's balance sheet to look better relative to the other majors before we have sterling recover substantially. But into next year, moves well into the 160s on cable, and ultimately even back to the 170s level, though that may take a few years.
Finally then, onto your local currency, the Rand. It's quite susceptible to global shock, so is it continuing to suffer now, and what do you predict for the South African currency going forward?
September was the second worst month on record for foreign activity in our markets. In other words, they sold out very aggressively. The only other month where it was worse was October 2008, so directly after Lehman. So it's, yes, risk off for the Rand. The outlook, well, it's still all about the risk environment. Our key view is certainly scope for more volatility, even scope for Rand weakness in the short term. But once this volatility settles down, capital is going to come flooding back to emerging markets. We've had just this wall of cash now for 7 years coming to emerging markets, coming to South Africa. With higher growth, higher yields, that capital will return once we get some stability in financial markets. So through 2012, we're expecting a resumption of a very strong Rand trend. On dollar Rand, we've got 720 at the end of 2012. That's from over 8 at the moment, but that forecast certainly doesn't rule out the possibility that we can have even further Rand weakness at the end of this year, between now and December, even into the first quarter of next year, as these Eurozone problems continue.
Thanks very much for your time, John. There'll be more Targets in Focus this week on Dukescop TV, so stay tuned. Goodbye.